Do we have all the board here at this point? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Gina will be joining us late, Paul.
Okay. Did she text you, Brother Pine?
Yes, she did.
Okay. Is Amel on?
I'm checking. Let me see. I do not see her yet.
I know Guy was on a minute ago. Is he still on? I don't know
Guy
how
is
long.
still on.
Okay. So it's Gina and Emel, right?
That's right.
David, how many screens can you bring up at once?
One at a time.
No, I meant, how many are you able to see at a given time?
Oh, I think it goes up to 36.
Are we all capable of seeing 36? I get
Yes.
9.
I have 49 as my maximum.
I also have 49.
Huh.
There we go. So do I.
Paul, and the 3 dots on the lower right-hand side of your screen, if you click those, you can click Change Layout, and then at the bottom there's a drag thing that'll you can change it from 16, as many as 49, or if you're struggling with bandwidth, as few as just a couple.
So where are these 3 dots located, Hayden?
If you kind of move your mouse, the bottom screen kind of pops up, and then the 3 dots are on the very bottom right of that white screen that moves up when you move your mouse.
I'm moving my mouse all over the place. It's chasing the cat right now, and I still can't find it. I'll get by. I'll just, if I leave anybody out, just speak up, I guess.
And Paul, to let you know that Amel just joined us.
Okay. So I guess we can start right now. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is now 5:31. Are there any additions, deletions with a motion to approve on the agenda? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve this agenda?
I'll make a motion, Victoria. Oh,
Al, second. Andrea?
I had one question pertaining to announcing the approved tuition. Sometimes we do that after the budget's approved, though I'm not sure if we have to.
No, it's not necessary to wait for that. It's actually in statute that by the 15th of January, the board would announce the tuition. So
I knew that deadline. I just didn't know if something drastic happened with the budget, if we would be changing it, but would have already approved it.
no.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so if there are none, and I will call the roll real quickly. Giuliano? Is an aye. Victoria? Aye, okay. Alice?
Aye.
Guy?
Aye.
Emel?
Aye.
Sonia? Sonya's
Here.
aye, Sonya's an aye, okay. And we don't have Gina on at this point. Is there anybody I left out besides myself?
And Tim.
Tim,
Aye.
okay, Tim is an aye, okay. And it's carried unanimous with one absentee. We come to the point of public comment, and I'm going to specify that we keep the comments to the board that are not related to anything that's not on this agenda as brief as possible so that we can get onto the business of the budget as well. And also not to repeat what has already been said in previous meetings would help us out greatly. Who would like to go first? I believe, yes,
Oh, sorry. This is Allison Healy. I would like to go first.
yes, please.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Healy. I reside in Barrytown and am the mother of a 4th and 6th grader at Barrytown School. I'm also a taxpayer and business owner in Barry City and a teacher at Barry City School. I've worked in the district for 18 years, and during this time I have worn many hats, but I would like to share something with many of you that you may not know. I come from a family of educators. My mother and father were both teachers at Barrytown, and my sister is a teacher there as well and has been there since the beginning of her career. It has been a total of 75 years that my family has dedicated to the children of Barry, and I'm happy to say that both of my parents are retired after teaching for 30 plus years. I'm sure that at least one person listening has benefited from or has been positively affected by their work, and this makes me both proud and hopeful. My parents are not the only teachers who have impacted students' lives. I am sure everyone listening can think of at least one educator that has played an important role in their life. As educators, we cherish the time we spend with all of your children. They make an impact on our lives, and we hope we impact theirs. During my parents' time, they did not have to teach during a pandemic, and for that, I am grateful. This has been one of the most difficult times of my career. It has truly tested my dedication to this profession. I love to teach. There is no better feeling than watching a child's face light up when they realize that they can read, or the triumph that they feel after figuring out they've solved a problem. The friendships created and fostered in my classroom and the family we create each year last well beyond their time in room 127. Throughout my years, I have also experienced tragedy in my classroom and school, the loss of a student, the death of a colleague. For these reasons, I understand the need to remain safe. I know that this experience has been so extremely difficult for working parents and for our children. I too have experienced this with my own kids. When I run a lesson on Google Meet with 10 5-year-olds, my 4th grader struggles with her fraction lesson, and my 6th grader needs help with her science activity. It has been a stressful situation for all. The one thing that I'm having a difficult time understanding, and it has kept me up at night, is the fact that we are all experiencing this strain in our everyday lives. We are all feeling the pinch of working, helping our kids with assignments, and watching our children struggle. But it seems like teachers are being blamed for so much of this. When we are being targeted and slandered on social media, we have been made to feel that our jobs do not matter in the eyes of some families, or that we are easily replaceable. The profession is losing dedicated teachers because of this pressure and utter disrespect that is being shown to the same people that hug your child when they are hurt, that help your child successfully get into college, that want the very best for each of your children. Education is important, and we need to remember that supporting our kids means supporting every staff member in our district. Every morning, in my kindergarten classroom, we begin the day by getting our thoughts together and making a pledge. That pledge states that we will remember to have kind thoughts, kind words, and kind hearts throughout our day. During this continued difficult time, I urge all of you to take that pledge each day and to truly consider the words you are speaking when you are speaking to and about others. We are all doing the best that we can. Thank you for your time, and all be well.
Thank you, Allison, for your statement. Who would like to present next?
Paul, I would like to. This is Rachel
Yes.
Van Vliet.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Thanks.
You asked for the time earlier.
Good evening, everyone. I am Rachel Van Vliet, speaking tonight on behalf of the Barry Educators Association. When we spoke to you on October 22nd, we discussed the need for compassion, patience, and for trust that the educational professionals in our district are making the most educationally sound and safe decisions that can be made under these difficult circumstances. None of us has a complete picture of the multitude of moving parts in our learning community. We are here tonight to reiterate these requests and to remind everyone that the unproductive rhetoric of recent meetings does irreparable damage to our community at a time when the only solution is to work as a team to best meet the needs of the students of Barry. We would like to again share our thanks with the board and the administration for their hard work and difficult decisions. In particular, we'd like to thank Superintendent Wells, who as a first-year superintendent has been tasked with a nearly impossible situation and has not been afraid to make tough and at times unpopular decisions when he knows they are the right ones. He has shown a collaborative and compassionate approach that has made educators feel heard and respected. As we shared on October 22nd, the workload on our educators is unsustainable and is leading to extreme burnout. This board knows that educators have left the profession and retired early due to the current circumstances, and that all over the state, there is difficulty filling these positions. What is exacerbating the situation in our community is the tenor of the discourse on social media and unfortunately in several of these board meetings. To hear adults speaking to each other and about our hard work in the manner that has occurred recently is devastating. It has led more staff to question whether they should continue in this profession when all the extra work is not just unappreciated, it is mocked and derided. Some of our members have pleaded with us to speak out on this tonight. One of the norms of our school board is respect others and their ideas. We are hopeful tonight that you will not just stick to this norm, but challenge others to do so when they've strayed. Compassion for each other is more necessary now than ever before. Each of us is an example to the students in Barry. I would urge everyone here to act how they want our students to act. We all have the same goal, to provide the best education to students while keeping everyone safe. We need to find ways to work together to meet this goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate that. Who would like to go next?
I would have a comment, a question. So I want to comment on section 4.2. Should I wait until 4.2? Because I want to say my statement before the board votes. Will there be time given before the board votes to talk?
If it's on the agenda, that would be the time to bring it up.
All right, thank you.
Does that help you? Okay, thank you. Who would like to go next?
Hi, I'd be happy to go next. This is Diane Solomon. I also want to reiterate some of the statements that the teachers have made. I'm really appreciative of all the hard work of the teachers that are supporting our students, as well as the administrators that I've had many emails with. I appreciate the time and effort that the superintendent, principals, ADs have spent listening to my concerns, and I feel heard, and that is appreciated. I also want to ask a question that I ask every meeting around the data in our supervisory union as far as active COVID or cases that is known since we've been back. I feel like the information that is provided by the state is really clear around the safety of students and staff in school. I don't know if anyone heard Secretary of French speaking last week, but the transmission rate within the school systems across the state that's monitored by the Department of Health is extremely low, like 0.0002%. So I'm gonna, again, ask that we use data that is provided by the health experts at the state to guide our decision-making. And again, ask if we have any information and we can use that information in a transparent way to build community.
Thank you, Diane. It's my understanding that most of the information we get on how we are maintaining our status quo, so to speak, comes from the state. And perhaps not at this time, because we've got a lot on our agenda, we can have the administration follow up with that and with the state to see what those differences that you clearly feel do exist affect us as far as our reopening schedule. That's the best I can promise you at this point. Who else would like to speak? Then if there's nothing else, then I will be moving on to the announced tuition for approval and action. Is this something, Lisa, you want to present to the board and specifically to the particular document that you've enclosed?
This is an annual data collection, and it's in statute that the board will announce its annual tuition for the following year by January 15th. So I'm just sharing with you not only a summary that gives you some history, but also the actual forms that will be submitted and will be shared with sending schools who are interested in sending their students to Barry.
And then we're referring to the LEAID U097 form and also the backside of that as well, dealing with
So
the Career Center?
Correct. This is the Barry Unified Union School District elementary tuition, secondary tuition, and then on the following page is your tech center CVCC tuition.
So the announced tuition, just for the record, for kindergarten and part-time rates is $15,645. The elementary is also at $15,645, and the high school is at $16,082, and the technical center is at $17,496. Is that the numbers we're using, correct?
Correct. Elementary K through 6 is $15,645. Grades 7 through 12, that's your secondary grades, is $16,082.
Okay. Can I have a motion for approval in a second, and we can have discussion?
I'll make the motion, Paul.
Is there a second? Who's seconding? Guy seconded it. Okay, is there any discussion?
Well,
Hearing
I'm
none?
just confused. No,
Go ahead.
I'm just confused how our cost per pupil is going up 4.47%, but our tuition isn't. So how exactly is that calculated?
So the tuition, there's worksheets. It's a data collection that the state sends out, and there's worksheets, and you complete those based on your expenses less your revenues, and there's some other calculations in there. This year, I did not receive our allowable tuition, which is generally by statute due to us on November 1st. So the agency would inform us of our allowable tuition, but we have not received that. So I'm leaving it status quo. One thing you don't want to do is over announce or announce a higher tuition than is allowable, because then you have to reimburse schools if they've paid over 3% higher than what you announced. So I'm trying to be conservative in this.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? The motion is for approval. Those in favor, I'm going to do it by roll, be probably the fastest. Victoria's aye. Thumbs up, and I'll try to call off as quick as I can. Janelle's aye. Guy?
Aye.
Aye. Tim?
Aye.
Sonia? Sonia? Is that an aye? Aye,
Yes.
okay, good. Giuliano? Is Giuliano on deck?
Yes, thumbs up for Giuliano.
Aye, aye, okay, I couldn't see him. Alice?
Aye.
I vote aye. Have I left anybody out? Gina, is she on board with that?
She's not present yet.
Okay. You might want to send her that message shortly, Victoria. I know she had short engagement to take care of. And it passes unanimous. We move on to the FY22 budget and warning, and this is something that's going to require action. Lisa, do you want to present that?
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, yeah. So based on the finance committee meetings we've had, the board meetings we've had, our last draft that we're presenting is draft 3. The documents are all in your packet, your addendum. I guess I'll note that we have a list of the reductions that the administration is recommending since draft 2 was presented. And so that's an additional 651,407 in reductions from draft 2. This is a 4.47 increase overall to your expense, your general fund expense budget. The board had asked that we come back with at least a 5% increase, no more than. And so we feel like this is, what you had asked for. The administration worked really hard. It was a difficult decision. It's always difficult to cut anything out of a budget, but we understand that the community is, having that times are tough, and so this is where we're at. If you go to the projected comparative tax rate calculations, you can see that it is an overall, in terms of the education per pupil spending, it's a 5.59% increase in per pupil spending. And still with a per pupil spending of 15,881,000, we're way below the state average and way below districts surrounding us. And I didn't
Sonia,
know.
you're the chair of the finance committee. Would you want to give your overview from the Tuesday night meeting, as well as the general budget process in itself, and then the committee members can weigh in too at this point?
Sure. Well, as you know, we had discussions about draft 1 and draft 2. We asked the administration and Lisa to go back and give us this something lower, and they've also given us what it would look like, some rough ideas about what it would look like if we tried to reduce the budget more to a 2% increase, and that's on one of the pages that Lisa has given us in the addendum. that spells out the reductions, possible reductions. I appreciate the administration's help. I know that it's not easy to cut things. I know we run a very, very tight budget. I will also say though, for community members, I recognize that in Berry City, our projected tax increase is 13 cents. And this is the second year in a row that we're asking for a double-digit increase. And that is really hard to understand, I'm sure, from a taxpayer perspective. And I would like to point out that the majority of the increase are things that are out of our control. And so to get the tax increase to be lower, we would have to cut staff. We will have to cut programs. We will have to cut things that are really going to impact all students. So we are hoping the finance committee at our meeting the other night was agreed that we could send this up with send this to this full board with our recommendation that we approve this budget with the 4.47 increase. Was it 4.47? Yeah. And we'd be happy to entertain any questions. I'm sure Lisa and administrators would be happy to entertain any questions.
Before we get into those questions, do any other members of the Finance Committee wish to speak about this as well? Victoria's no. Does Gina know? And is ML no? Okay. Anybody have questions from any quarter of the public, what have you?
Yes. Hello, my name is
Okay,
Alexander Reese. I am a student at Spalding. I have a statement I would like to read. On Tuesday night, I joined the Finance Committee in order to express my concerns with the budget around potential cuts in sports, the library, and school supplies. Their insight was helpful in furthering my understanding of the budget. They inspired me to look deeper into the budget and into the law around special education funding. As many of you know, Spalding High School's section of the budget will be decreasing under this iteration of the budget, while special education funding for the district will be receiving around a $1 million increase. That represents approximately a 7.61% increase in funding. Additionally, the superintendent's office will be receiving a 7.47% increase in funding, and there will be a 16.67% increase in funding for Berry City School Principal's office. I was wondering what was causing these increases because they were large in comparison to other parts of the budget. My first thought was that the cause was inflation. So I found out what the inflation rate for 2020 was. It was under 2%. So the large difference between these percent increases and the percent increases of inflation indicate the inflation is not the sole cause of the rise. Then I figured the cost to run special education must be rising across the board for school districts in Vermont, but it isn't. Berlin's proposed budget includes a $700,000 decrease in special education funding, and MRPS's budget only has a 3.04% increase in funding for their special education program. So other schools are not experiencing this steep hike in special education funding. In the finance meeting, I was told the increase was in part because of law. The two major laws regulating special education are IDEA and 504, both of which have been around for decades and have not recently had major amendments. The major concern of the board, I believe, was Act 370 and Act 73, although 173, although I cannot double check this to determine the specific act they referred to because the minutes have not yet been posted. The concern caused by Act 173 is understandable. When you are spending money, when you are spending more money than it seems Berry can afford, and the state says it is effectively going to give schools less money, there is cause for concern. But this law has already been delayed 2 years, and we are saving no money. Who knows how many more years it will be kicked down the road when no district wants it and no teacher wants it, and teachers are a large voting bloc. The Berry district has not reduced the size of their special education budget despite the threat of Act 173. In 2018, our budget for special education was listed as high by the AOE, and our cost for ADM was 26.02% higher than the state average. That was the 7th highest out of all the districts in Vermont. Let me repeat that. It was the 7th highest in the state. And that was when our budget was millions of dollars less than the one proposed. In this budget, they cut things that affect everyday life for students and teachers, including cutting money from library, everyday supplies for students, and proposed cuts to sports. They are proposing a 1% decrease in teacher salaries, but this has not been agreed to by the union and may not be. Many of the major increases to the budget are in funding of administration and in a large increase to the non-reimbursable parts of C programs. To sum up, if the rise is not due to inflation, not due to enrollment numbers, other schools are not seeing a similar rise in expenditure, and it is not being forced by changes in the law, then the cuts that are being made, and then cuts can be made in order to reduce financial stress on the Barrie community and during this difficult time. I would like to request, I advise the board to vote down this budget. If the board does choose to strike down the budget, I would like to request that more money for new math textbooks be made available in the next budget, and the board examine how to cut the budget without affecting the everyday life of students and individual students' learning outcomes.
Thank you, Alexander. Is Stacy here? Because this seems to be mostly about the special ed expenses that we incur.
It's not entirely about that, but that is an aspect of it. There is also a large portion of it is where increases, including administration and the supervisory union that they're experiencing.
Well, let me take them in order then. Is Stacy Anderson here?
I'm here, Paul.
Would you like to address the concerns? I know we have a higher than usual number of special ed needs students in the Barrie area, so maybe you could address part of that, but also the requirements, just to get that clarity in.
Well, I'm having a hard time deciding where to start because I think a lot of this was discussed the other evening. And so maybe you could clarify specifically what question you'd like me to answer, either Paul or Alexander.
It wasn't as much of a question as a statement. Our education, our adjusted per pupil numbers are significantly higher than other areas. So I don't think that the board should approve this budget. I think they should send it back to the school. Now the budget that's more equitable for the kids of the union.
So to be clear, Stacy, is there any way we could cut the special education budget in light of the number of students and stuff that we have? And how would that be possible, or is it allowable? I guess that would be my question.
Okay, thanks, Paul. That's helpful. In light of the number of students we have and the students' needs and the services that are written into each individual student's IEP, by law, we cannot arbitrarily cut that budget and therefore remove services that are guaranteed to students by their IEPs. I think we did discuss the other night, some of the increase in the special ed budget is due to the shift that we're making into dedicating more towards the C program and growing that program, thereby looking to the future, being able to decrease our spending in special education. And that is something we discussed the other night quite in depth, I think. Does that answer your question, Paul?
I wasn't Michael. I was trying to field what the general question was. And to the administrative costs, who would like to take that question? And then we're going to have to move on to other people if we're going to get through this entire agenda.
I can. Oh, David, do you want to take it? You're on mute.
Oh, yeah, sure. I can start off and then I'll ask Lisa to follow up. I know that at all of the school buildings, the administrators have looked at their costs and in particular staffing costs, and have been creative with how they staff their offices. In some cases have reduced the staffing in their offices. We have reduced staffing at the central office. Lisa could you elaborate a little bit more on central office expenses?
Sure. In the business office, we had a retirement this fall, and we chose not to replace that position. There's also in special ed administrative support. We had people who we reduced 2 positions in the special ed administrative support. There is also a technology position, a paraeducator under the technology budget that was reduced. So I think that we've, really tried to look for efficiencies and work with, all the other administration to come up with a budget that's reasonable.
Okay, Sonia, you had anything you want to follow up with?
Well, I think I just want to, first of all, thank Alexander for asking his questions and coming to the finance meeting again, because I think it's absolutely fabulous to have a student who's done this much work. This is more work than I think a lot of taxpayers do, so I appreciate that. And I'm assuming Alexander isn't a taxpayer yet, so I can really appreciate that. But it impacts him directly, and so I can also appreciate that, this is his opportunity to ask questions and have a voice. I will say that one thing that is hard to follow in the budget, Alexander, is the increase to benefits, and that is a huge chunk of our increase, and that's health insurance. And you're going to see that spread out over paraeducators and teacher lines. And so you're not going to see like a big jump in one line because it's a little bit, but then when you add it all up, that's a huge part of our increase that we don't have any control over. It used to be a part of a negotiated agreement, just like salary, but now it's no longer, it's a statewide agreement. And so when the state makes a decision, or the teachers union and the school board's coalition makes a decision on what that is going to be, then we just have to follow that. So we're in the second year of that, and that's where a major increase is. And I don't think you're going to necessarily be able to track that as you go through the budget. I'm absolutely certain that Lisa could give us a number for how much of this total increase that is, and that might be more helpful. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood that that's not gonna show up as like just a really big increase on when you're looking for something.
Can I just add one more thing? And we talked about how, the budget process is complicated. You have a 50-something page document, but at any point in time, it seems like you're really interested in, I would offer the opportunity at any point in time if you want to come in and talk to me one-on-one or to, learn more about the process. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you for the offer, but as far as process goes, I think I'll be fine. My mother is a principal.
Okay, thank you for that. It is convoluted. I want to bring up one more factor. Today there was much discussion on how we want to get accurately the projected competitive tax rate calculations out. And if you folks on the board will look at your package, you'll see that in the third column, there's been some identifications, and it assumes reappraisals that are either going on now in one community and is projected to go on in the other community, and what that would have as an effect. We didn't want to construe this thing as meaning that there was going to be a specific sharp differences between the two communities, but the facts remain that the CLAs were different in both communities. Barrytown is right now going through a CLA change, and it took a while to find out some information from the Tuesday night meeting, but the tax rate increase in Barrytown right now at this moment in time is 22 cents. If the grand list gets large by April 1st, that means we would be at a different CLA rate at 100%. You'll see that at the top of the two columns on the third part of that page. And that would have a reversal of 22-cent increase to a negative 16-cent increase. But in the reality, as we discussed at the finance meeting, that just means that the property values have changed and therefore the tax rate would go down, and then we're on a common level of appraisal with the rest of the state. Barry City is planning on going through a reappraisal starting this coming year. And if they get through that process, that third column represents what would be a 6 cents instead of the 13 cents we have right at this time. So that's an interesting factoid that needs to be put out there to put into perspective. And the other number that was been brought to my attention was the 5.59%. That is the equalized pupil calculation. Then Lisa could spend probably 5 minutes talking about all the different calculations that go into make that number. But what we have at the top of the page on both of those columns is a 4.15% of budget to budget. Do you have any questions on that so far? This is a multi-step process that we have to go through, and I would say that probably 90% of the population out there would get just as lost as we beginners on the board would have gotten lost to go through this process. So the 4.47% that is on the table right now to be voted upon comes from all these different kinds of calculations and what has been done thus far in iterations 1, 2, and now we're at 3. Any questions?
Paul, I see from a member of the public, Colby Berard has his hand up.
Yeah, okay. Please proceed.
Actually, it's Christy Berard. I'm just using my son's account.
Okay.
I live in Barrytown. I have 3 children. I have 2 in high school and 1 at Barrytown School. So I just have a question about this budget cut, because I see on here that you're cutting with this proposal 8 teachers between Barrytown and Berry City. You're cutting 3 special educators. You're cutting Spalding Athletics by $37,000 and Barrytown, Berry City by $100,000. So this concerns me, since my kids, and I'm sure all the other kids in the school district, have gone through so much this past year. And I don't think that we can afford to lose our teachers or our special educators. I have a child that's on an IEP, and he's struggled immensely through this whole remote learning, not remote learning, hybrid, whatever. And I just feel like cutting this is not going to help these kids. It's going to hinder them even more than they've already been hindered. So I'd like to know, like, maybe a little bit more specific on, like, athletics, 100K. Like, are you getting rid of the athletics at Barrytown and Berry City? What type of teachers are you getting rid of at these 2 schools?
Sonia, would you like to address that, or who you want? Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to take that question. Hi, Christy, it's Sonia, and I wanted to let you know that the sheet that you're looking at are additional reductions if we need to make them. The reductions that are included in the budget that is being presented tonight is on the page, the first page, with the numbers 1 through 14 on the left-hand side, and it says draft 3 at the top, and then it says the total reductions are $651,407. The next page are additional reductions that would get us to a 2% increase. We're not suggesting those at this point, but we had asked the administrators, what would it look like if we needed to go lower? What if the board asks us to go lower? What would that look like? What are some of the things that would be on the table? So those are the things that are on the table. Those cuts are not included in this budget. So, sorry. So there's, the cuts that have been suggested are the 1 through 14 on the page right before the one that you were looking at. Does that make sense? Do you see that page?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I was just concerned because, I mean, our teachers are working really hard. I do have some concerns with high school, but I have no problem speaking to the high school teachers about that. But I know for my youngest, he has a great IEP case manager, and his 4th grade teacher is amazing. She checks in with us all the time. I can't say enough about the teachers. I can't say enough about my principal. So I just got all choked up thinking, oh my gosh, like my taxes just went up, and I don't mind, but well, I do, but I don't mind as long as it goes for something that my kids are gonna gain from and not be hindered from. So I appreciate your
Mrs. Barad, I would say this to you, that you kind of got a preview of what will happen, what we'll be looking at if this budget goes down to defeat. You're looking at the round 2 that follows this thing.
Okay.
So that should give you pause to think about it in that term. That's why we've moved to this point here, to try to get a reasonable budget out there. And no matter what we choose, it's going to be difficult slaying if this budget doesn't pass as it sits right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
Paul,
Guy?
Paul, excuse me,
Stacy, go ahead.
This is Stacy, if I may. Just a point of clarification for Christy. That page that would be reductions to 2%, it does not say 3 special educators. It says 3 special ed para educators. So I wanted to make sure you understood that it would not be special educators, but para educators.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we hope
Guy?
that we don't have to go there.
Yeah, me
Okay,
too.
thank you, Stacy. Guy?
And I don't know who this question is for. So in the stimulus package, there was $54 billion passed for public education. This might be a timing issue, but at what point do we know what impact those funds will have on the state of Vermont? Because I'm assuming that it's going to be part of the budget discussion at the state. But that's not chump change. That's 4 times more money for public education that was given the first time around. So that's out there hanging somewhere. And I guess I'd like to know a little bit more information about that, and maybe it's too early to ask.
Phil Scott also has a pot of money that would be also dedicated towards education too, Guy. David?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it is a little bit too early, Guy. I was on the call with Secretary French today with the other superintendents, and he did talk about how COVID relief funding will continue through next year. But of course, the legislature has yet to make its decisions, and the governor as to exactly how that will be allocated. But we can expect funding to support the recovery work, really, that we will need to do to support student learning in light of the pandemic.
Okay. Any other questions pertinent to this before we take up the question? Do we have a motion on the floor by? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve? It was seconded to move into any further discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget, the 3rd draft of the budget.
I'll
Is there
second it.
seconded by ladies first this time, ML? Okay, any further discussion by the board?
Paul,
Yes.
for the record, the amount of the expenditure budget that you're approving should be read out loud into the motion.
I wasn't sure if we were going to just approve it and then do the budget warning, so I'm sorry, Andrea.
No, the warning is separate. Basically, you pass an expenditure budget amount, and then you can approve the warning separately.
Okay, let me find my paper then. I will make a motion to approve the draft 3 budget for $47,042,954.
That is the general fund expense budget. The total dollar amount is includes the grant funds as well.
So is it the $50,492,954? Okay, so scratch that. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong paper. I knew I would get it wrong. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the budget for FY22 for $50,492,954.
And we had a second to that. Is the second still good with that?
Second is still good with that.
Okay, is there any further discussion? And went over the tax sheet already, so that kind of helps clarify that before we get to the warning. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor, thumbs up, and I'll quickly pronounce the names. Imel's aye. Guy, I can't see your thumb. Aye. Victoria's aye. Sonia's aye. Is Gina on? Gina?
She's an aye.
Gina's aye.
Aye.
Giuliano?
Aye.
Tim Bolton?
No.
And the chair will vote aye. The voters will determine whether this budget will in fact be our working budget for next year. And the ayes have it, so this is passed. Next is the requiring action is the annual meeting warning. You have the actual warning in your packet.
Do we, wait, time out a second. Do we have to do the warning for the budget?
Yes, you do.
We have to do that too. That's a two-part, sorry. 4.2 is a two-part. We just approved the budget, but now we have to approve the warning.
Okay, the way this came through came out of sequence. I'm sorry, you're absolutely right. So who would like to make the motion based upon the information you have? David, you have a question?
Well, I have some information to share. And I know looking at the warning for both the budget vote and for the annual meeting that happens before the budget, in relation to COVID, we'll need to make some adjustments in how we do this business. And I know, Paul, you and I discussed it earlier today. I was reviewing today some information from the School Board Association, and it was pointing out that the legislature passed Act 162, which allows school districts that normally vote from the floor at their annual and special meetings to instead use Australian ballot by vote of the school board. So this is a temporary action that allows any or all school district meetings to be conducted via Australian ballot in the year 2021. And a motion can be made pursuant to Act 162, et cetera. So I know that'll be part of our discussion, and I just wanted to bring that up, that act existed.
Okay, who else wanted to address this? I thought I saw two hands up. Okay, so are we going to move on approving the warning as written? Is that what I'm hearing, David?
Well, I want to be really clear because I want to make sure that we're looking at the correct warning.
This is the one that has March 2nd, and it has legal voters, residents, legal voters, Barry Unified District, and adopted and approved by the Board of Directors. Those three attested statements at the bottom. And it's Articles 1, 2, and 3.
I actually think that it was in the first, the warning that was in the first addendum is the correct warning.
I'm sorry, I got that one again. You're right.
Because it has Article 1 with the directors who are up, their terms are up. Article 2, which is the full budget.
This is the Articles 1 through 7?
I see Articles 1 through 5.
No, it's Articles 1 through 3.
All right. Let's get some clarity here. Anyone know which article warning we are actually trying to move here?
So the March 2nd, 2021, it's at the top. That is your budget warning. And there are listed Articles 1, 2, and 3 in that.
And up in the upper right-hand corner, it's got 4.2 on it.
No, that's not what I have.
So did you, do you have the latest addendum that came out about 3:30 today?
Yeah. But I think the only warning that was included in that addendum, Lisa, was the warning for the annual meeting.
No,
No,
two revised warnings were submitted. One was for the March 2nd. This is your budget vote. This is the one you're looking at, Articles 1, 2, and 3. The second one was a warning regarding your annual meeting.
Correct.
And this one that came out later in the afternoon is a shorter version, a corrected, amended version from the ones that came out prior.
That is correct.
that's basically what I had read for the first one. Is that correct? Lisa, anybody want to weigh in on that? The one that has the dollar amounts and everything in,
Yes, yes, yes.
and the number of directors, seats, and so forth, all in there. Are we all on the same page, folks? Gina says yes. Sonia, you're not sure?
Yeah, no, I've got the right one now. Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Want to make sure we're on the right one?
Once you know you're on the right one and everyone's on the same page, I'm going to throw a little wrench into the works.
Well, let's throw the wrench right now because we've had enough wrenches to this point.
Okay. Before you approve this, there's something you might want to consider, though I know you feel time is of the essence. At last year's annual meeting, Mrs. Dawes, Carol Dawes, advised that our current article of agreement have the nomination petition deadline, which is a deadline which makes it too late for her printing ballots. It comes in very late. So she asked that she said it would be preferable to change the petition deadline from saying 30 to 40 days prior to the election to having them come in the 6th Monday before election. And she requested that the board give thought to amending the articles of agreement. And if you do wish to amend the articles of agreement, you probably have to have that added to this warning. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait until there's another Australian ballot. This can only be approved by an Australian ballot. So either another election or a special meeting. But if we miss it right now, it could be another year before you could put this on the budget. I mean, on the ballot.
Can I just make or ask a question? If we're going to change the articles of agreement, wouldn't we need to run that by our attorney?
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. I think making this change is going to take some time, but it's something that kind of got forgotten. And now we're getting down to the wire, and it may cause difficulties for Carol in the future if we don't have this change implemented at some point to change that deadline for petitions.
Okay, so to be clear, we have to put any changes to the article of agreement onto the Australian ballot. That's why we would need to do it now, so we could get it onto the ballot, so it could be voted on. So next year at the same time, we won't be going. It'll be the 6th Monday and not 30 to 40 days.
Correct.
Okay.
We're doing this early enough, so it should not be a problem. Am I correct, Andrea? Because we still have time.
I guess it depends on how long it takes for an attorney to draft something up. I mean, I think you're going to need legal counsel involved in this. And so I don't dare say. I mean, this is probably the earliest we've ever approved a budget. So that's great. And maybe if you know the number, Josh could move forward with his publications, because this particular change, if you're asking for it, is not going to change, I don't think, any of the information that Josh would publish.
So could you just simply say the board could approve that you're going to put Article 4 to consider changing the Articles of Agreement? mean, you don't necessarily have to have the change in this.
I believe the
document.
legal, no, I
We
believe
have
the legal warning has to be exactly what's going to be on the ballot.
It has to be
Yeah.
legal documentation.
So can I make a suggestion that we've already approved the budget, so communications can begin with the budget number, but that we can contact our attorney to find out about changing the articles of agreement, and then we meet again next week, and we could approve this warning at that time, which is still, we've approved the biggest issue was approving it early enough so Josh could start communications, so he could start sending things out to the community. And we've approved a number. And I will make a side note, we also need to approve the CVCC budget because we didn't do that. So if we agree to those things and then just push the warning off till next week and maybe can get some language drafted by then, maybe?
Or you wait till next year and you just put that in right now. My understanding was that everybody wanted to see this budget approved now, so the printing and the ballots and all the other stuff could be done.
But you can approve your budget before you approve your warning. Once you've approved the amount is set.
Go ahead, David.
I was going to say, my concern is the turnaround time with the attorney and the deadline of posting our warning by January 31st. I would think if we're looking at adopting or changing the articles of agreement, that could be a topic that could take more than one meeting if things need to be followed up on.
That's why I said, make it a priority for next year and get it into the works now. I know it would have been nice if we remembered that factoid from last year instead of having it a night that we're trying to vote on things. So not to feel rushed or trying to push something through real quickly. It's up to the board. What does the board want to do? Don't all speak at once. I think we might as well wait, and I think we vote on this tonight, and it just becomes part of the future.
My only concern, Paul, is we did that last year and now we're at this point again. So unless we light a fire under ourselves.
But it wasn't put into the warning. It wasn't in the warning process last year, though. I mean, it came at the point of when we were voting, and it was just too late at that point.
Right.
This got dropped. It shouldn't get dropped. I think right now, with all the smart minds we have in the central office, we should make sure this is a priority. It doesn't get dropped for next year. Any other thoughts?
Well, along Sonia's comment about getting it done, if we're putting it off tonight, then I think we have to put it on an agenda for a future meeting to ensure that it gets done sooner than later.
To Sonia's point, we're meeting next week, but the question that the superintendent is pointed out is we may not get legal done in a timely enough fashion.
Understood.
And if we have to have more than one meeting, then we won't meet the deadline.
Correct. I understand that. I'm agreeing with both you and Sonia that, yeah, maybe not try and get it done for this year, put it off for next year, but in turn, if we're putting it off, put it on a meeting so it's ticked off the list early. Does that make any
And that
sense?
can be done this month.
Pardon me?
That could be done this month. We have 2 more meetings this month.
That could be done this month. And so it's not done for now, but it's at least done while it's on people's minds.
So Paul and David,
Yes, Guy.
could we at least check in to see whether it is possible? And if it is, then we'll do it. And if it isn't, then we'll put it off.
So what's your recommendation, Guy?
Well, I recommend that we check with legal counsel and see what the possibilities are, and if we could do it next meeting, then that would be great. And if we can't, then we'll have to kick the can down the road. I mean, I don't like doing that to Carol, but Well, we messed up. We forgot. So that's my suggestion. But, you know, David, you know better than I do. You deal with legal counsel every day. So
what's the pleasure of the board? Somebody want to make a motion to whatever effect?
No, you still have an open motion on the floor.
To approve the warning?
To approve the warning. And before you do that, actually, you really should approve the Career Center budget first.
Yes. Who made did I make a motion to approve the warning?
Yeah, seconded by Mel.
Okay, so I'm going to withdraw that.
Okay.
And I'd make a motion that we approve the CVCC budget, which is listed on this particular warning as Article 3 for $3,331,442 for FY22.
Is there a second?
I'll second
Seconded
that.
by Guy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, thumbs up. Emel's aye, Tim's aye, Gaia's aye, Gina's aye, Sonia's aye, Victoria,
I am I.
Giuliano.
Aye.
Have I left anybody out? And I'm an aye. It carries.
You forgot Alice. She said aye though.
Alice. Where's Alice? How can I forget Alice? Alice?
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I don't have, time I get around to figuring out how I can get 49 screens working here. We just add more flavor to the stew. Anyway, thank you very much on that. Now we're on to the next motion.
We have to decide what we're going to do about the warning.
That's what I'm coming to. We're going to table the warning till next meeting, which is a week away.
Yes.
Sonia, you want to make that motion, or does
I would
anybody else?
I would like to table the warning, approving the warning for the March 2nd, 2021 vote until next week, and find out if we can get another article in there to change the articles of agreement for when petitions are due.
Okay, is there a second? Mel seconded it. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor, thumbs up real quick. Alice, I got you first. Mel, Guy, Victoria, Sonia, Giuliano.
Aye.
And Tim?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, carried unanimous. Next up is the annual meeting, I believe.
Paul, can we just document for the record who's going to be moving forward to contact the attorneys to get a draft article of agreement if possible?
That'd be the superintendent.
Thank you.
Okay, do we do the annual meeting now? Everybody had an opportunity to look at that one. Is there a motion to adopt this warning?
Can we have a discussion about this first?
Normally we can have a motion in a second, then have a discussion.
Well, how are we doing the annual meeting? That's the discussion.
That's part of the discussion, yes. So let's get a motion on the floor and get into the discussion.
So moved, Alice.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Victoria. Oh,
A guy seconded it? Okay. Now the discussion. Go ahead, Sonia.
So, David, the information that you read that I also saw from the VSBA is that we can because of COVID, we can do the annual meeting instead of having to do it in person. We can do it by Australian ballot, which means this would also be voted on town meeting day.
Yes, that would be what I would assume. You wouldn't have the voters going to the polls more than once.
The other way is we could have our annual meeting, and usually those attendances are extremely low. We could still have that meeting in an auditorium and spread out social distance and so forth to conduct that meeting. Last year, we conducted it in the auditorium hallway because the library was locked. And I think we had maybe 5 or 6 people there.
Regardless, Paul, I think we still have the mandate that no one is allowed in school buildings currently, except for students, staff, etc.
And I think we're also under a mandate that we're not supposed to have multi-household gatherings. So that would go against that as well.
So one issue you're going to run into with this is normally it is at this meeting that your clerk and treasurer are nominated and elected. And it's always been Donna Kelty, and Carol Dawes is always the treasurer, and she's the one who signs the checks. If you leave it open, anybody can run for these positions.
Wasn't there also discussion though about the board appointing the moderator, the clerk, and the treasurer?
I know, and the moderator doesn't matter. The moderator is a temporary moderator who just moderates at that one meeting, and that's it for the year. So we've usually had Tom Koch be the temporary moderator. It's not for a one-year term. I believe it's always just been for that meeting. But then we do elect the clerk and treasurer. And that, you know, it's always come off from the floor, and it's always been, you know, the town clerks. And I do not have enough knowledge about appointing anyone or saying that you could appoint them. So I would not dare answer that question for you.
We have issues dealing with bylaws and other documents and things that we're required by statutes to do. So we got to be cognizant of all of that as well. I think that was part of the earlier discussion we had today, David. Was that correct? Lisa, did you find out anything different than what we had talked about this morning?
I was not working on that. I think,
David?
not sure if we reached out to Pietro or not.
We did reach out to Pietro, and we have not had a response yet. So, you know, part of the answer to our question is that we can vote things by Australian ballot if a board member moves that pursuant to Act 162. But I see the outstanding concerns of who would be the clerk and who would be the treasurer. If the board wants, we could table this till next week when we're going to discuss the other warning, and I will have gotten a response from Pietro by then.
We need more clarity, and if it means tabling, we're tabling one, we might as well do them both at the same time. Does everybody agree with that?
Yeah, Paul, just a clarifying question. Because I know Donna Kelty is retiring this year, and so I'm not sure where she's going to fit in, if anywhere, in this particular piece. I guess that's a question we have.
I know she's retiring in May, but there'll be another town clerk. And I think what we've set up is that we'd have the 2 clerks involved in this lineal fashion that we have right now, with one being treasurer, one being recording clerk, and whoever that clerk would be probably would be the person that would be the logical person to have. Any thoughts on that?
I think that makes sense, but I think what I hear Guy saying is if we elect Donna Kelty and then she's no longer in that position, right, do we have to, you know, appoint someone because she retires? Maybe that's the question. And maybe that's a question that you could ask Pietro, David. Can I ask a clarifying question? What are we asking Pietro? Are we asking if we can appoint those 3 positions and then vote the rest, Article 4, Article 5, Article 6 on the Australian ballot? I'm trying to understand, what are we asking?
So we asked Pietro to review these warnings actually before I think it was you, Sonia, who shared the VSBA information about Act 162. But but still I can follow up with him and ask specifically, how do we have a clerk and a treasurer be voted upon? Because that's normally nominated at the meeting. And if it's Australian ballot, how would you accommodate that? And also, since we know one of the individuals is going to retire, how do you handle that? So I can ask him both of those questions.
And when you're asking that question, David, you know, we're going to have a clerk in both communities. So you can designate the official title of municipal clerk in that regard, if we want to stay with the system that we have in place right now. Otherwise, then we're going to be moving away from, you know, the municipal side clerks being involved with this this process for us.
So my question is, if we can appoint people, and I'm not saying after they retire, but if we can appoint people to those positions rather than have to elect them by Australian ballot, then we could just say we're going to appoint the clerks of this community and that community to fill those roles. And then that,
correct.
So I just want to be clear that we can do that. I don't know if we can.
That might be another change to Articles of Agreement, because you hold this meeting, I believe, that there might be something in the Articles of Agreement. I'm not positive on that. The one thing you also might want to worry about a little bit is Article 5, which, you know, you're authorized to borrow funds. That always passes, of course, in the floor meeting. But if that went to Australian ballot and the voters voted that down, then what would you do?
Let's get a full legal opinion on all of this.
Can I ask a question? And I think maybe I read this somewhere, but why can't we do the annual meeting remotely like we do these meetings? And it just seems crazy that this hasn't, like, we're not the only people confronting this issue, right? But they haven't created any way for people to do these meetings remotely.
We went through this earlier.
There's a document in your packet labeled.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I've been trying to find it, but I'll keep looking.
Yep. And there is, it does say at on the bottom of the last page of that if you're looking for some specific information, you can contact Will Senning or JP Isabel regarding elections. So perhaps it would be beneficial to get a hold of them too regarding the issues.
Yes, indeed. I will do that.
You'll probably want to designate Will Senning because of Guy's role on the board, so we don't have a construed conflict. I know he's with the Secretary of State, but father, son, am I correct, Guy? You would probably prefer that too, I imagine.
He probably would do that.
Yep. Okay, good. That's what I thought. Okay, so do we have a motion to table this?
Well, right now you have a motion to approve it. So I'm going to guess that Alice is going to want to withdraw her motion.
Is that correct, Alice?
Yes, please.
And the second for that was?
It was
it
Guy, but once someone's withdrawn a motion, I don't think the seconder has to.
Okay. So it's been withdrawn. Now I'll take the new motion to table this till our next meeting.
I move that we table it.
Amel moved that, seconded by Alice. Any discussion? We discussed it. All those in favor, thumbs up quickly. Alice, aye. Guy, aye. Amel, aye. Sonia, aye. Gina, aye. Giuliano?
Aye.
Tim Bolton?
Aye.
Who am I missing? Missing one more. Victoria?
Aye.
And I vote aye, carried unanimous. Thank you. Moving on, is there anything else that we need to have action on before we get to the policies?
Paul, I was going to say, I did see a question from the audience. I'm not sure if it's still up there from Tim Sanborn.
Is Tim still online? Is it
I
relevant?
am still online, and I didn't have a question. I just wanted to give some of my own input. I think you should go with Pietro, obviously, but I'm on a board myself, and my understanding is you cannot you can't select those positions, they need to be on the ballot, and there's a form that needs to be submitted to be on the ballot. But that's my understanding within my town and the constraints that we have here.
Well, Pietro will be able to give us the information. Okay, so we're on to the first reading of the electronic communications between employees and students. This is B8. Alice, do you want to talk about this? And then we'll get a motion on the floor. Alice, you're on mute.
It covers, it's a policy that covers the massive use of technology in communication and covers the school as to what are the best ways to protect itself.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So,
Right.
could I have a motion to approve this with a second, and we can have discussion?
Motion to approve, Victoria.
Is there a second?
Second, Guy.
Seconded by Guy. Discussion.
I have questions.
Okay,
Can I go ahead?
sure, go ahead.
So, in the second paragraph, it says, in accordance with Act 5 of 2018, this model policy is adopted. Is this going to be a model policy, or is it just going to be this policy?
Good question.
Because I'm guessing this was probably on the VSBA model policy, but I don't think this is a model policy, right? This is just a policy.
Right.
So we should scratch model.
I think this is a model policy.
Well, it's based on a model policy, but we're adopting it as policy, right? It's not a model policy. It's an actual policy. We're basing it on a model policy.
I've got to double check. One of these two policies is actually mandated by the state. Juliana, do you remember which one? I just looked it up and emailed somebody.
That's the next one. That one is a training. That's the second one.
Well, actually, it is also this one.
Yeah.
And because it's Act 5 of the Vermont legislature, and the guidance from legal and from the VSBA is that the language in this, actually, this was a conversation that Luke Ather and I had with the VSBA, and they adopted this language verbatim from what the state wanted in statute. So it is required in that fashion.
So there's, I hear what you're saying, but in my opinion, it's incorrect. This isn't a model policy. It's a policy. If we approve it, it's a policy. So with that being said, I'm fine to leave it in there, but it's not technically a model policy. This is another just picky little thing. Under number 2, on the next page, it says procedures. It says the superintendent shall develop procedures for both the receipt and handling of reports filed under this policy. See 4A and B below. There's no 4A and B below.
Is your thoughts to strike the parentheses part?
Well, what are the procedures for handling the receipt and handling of reports? Is it the reporting to agencies? Is it?
Is A the definitions, is B the implementation? I guess that might have something to do with it.
I don't know.
Can we designate it that way so it gives the maximum amount of clarity?
I know this particular policy, I have my notes. Luke said this was a bolded policy from VSBA and we were not allowed to change even one word of it.
But it refers to something that doesn't exist, so that's ridiculous. No offense, I'm just saying we shouldn't be referring to something that doesn't exist in the policy.
Right, so perhaps someone should go back to VSBA and ask them to clarify it.
Sonia, you want to give them a call? know
I
you-
would be happy to. Can we just table this for tonight?
For first reading, sure. I mean,
We
we're
can
still gonna have
table?
a second reading, but that's all right, sure.
Are we going to approve it or are we, and then I'm going to ask, or are we going to table it and then I will ask?
That's up to you. You folks are gonna be making the motions.
How
So,
about I rescind my motion, Andrea?
Gotcha.
just a suggestion, why can't we approve first reading and then make the change? It sounds like it won't be a major change, number one. Number two is my concern is we're still doing a lot of remote stuff, and I don't want to continue to keep kicking this down the road. You know, I want to protect staff and students personally, so I think the sooner we have something, the better off we'll be, but just my opinion.
So what's the pleasure?
Can Victoria already rescinded. Guy, I hear what you're saying. Can we just put it on next week's agenda and I will hopefully have some clarification by then for
Sure.
first reading?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Also-
Sonia, are you gonna be attending the policy committee meetings when you have some serious questions so they can take care of it there?
I could do that, but when these kinds of things come up and they're actually, we're not allowed to change anything. I don't think that means I shouldn't ask questions. So I could go to the policy meeting and ask all of those questions and they'll say, we can't change this, we can't change this. But I also think that it's good for, this is our one job. This is like one of our two jobs, finances and policy. So I think it's okay to discuss it during board meetings.
I'm trying to get it so it gets expedited even more so. So if you ask the question, then somebody has the smarts to pick up the phone and do what I just asked you to do.
I apologize. I wish I had realized that it was that small. I read it for the last meeting and then we tabled it and I forgot that it was those tiny little things. So I apologize.
Just send the policy chair an email.
What's the section that's in question?
It's
I
number
can
2.
clarify on that, and this might be a simple matter to straighten for next week. It looks like when I look at the model policy on the VSBA website, there is a section 5 that inadvertently got left off of this, so we can include it for next week, and that has reporting to other agencies: A, DCF; B, Agency of Education; C is police, and D is continuing to investigate.
You said 5, Dave, or is it 4?
Nope, it's 5.
Well, am I reading this wrong? Because it looks like IV, which means 4. C, IV-A, B.
But there's
That's my Roman
also,
numerals is still right.
right.
So there is something in 4A and B for what you sent, David, for your link.
Is there 4A, 4B?
Yeah, there is.
You know, it's just, so let's straighten this up for next time. I think, yeah, now that you mention it, it is a formatting error. So either I will pause and say that I think it would be best to take a look at it next week because of the need to adopt this verbatim. That in the VSBA model policy, they are using Roman numeral 5 and then A, B, C, and D. And the policy that's in our packet that we're looking at is the same content, but it's reporting to other agencies 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it looks like a formatting error, and I can have that corrected for next week.
So anybody opposed to tabling this for next week? Here none, it's tabled to next week. Second policy that's up is the one dealing with, and the reading is prevention of sexual harassment as prohibited by Title IX.
Can I also
Go
make
ahead.
a suggestion that we table this as well? Because there's also some small little things in this one that need to be addressed. There's a weird reference to under actual knowledge, official 2 Q3 apostrophe 11. I don't know what the heck that is. I think it might just be a little weird thing.
So what we can do is, if you can note all those things, Sonia, or anybody else, if you have any thoughts on that, of course, this is why it gets sent out to us early. So if we have any concerns, we can send some emails. So this can be tracked down and maybe even updated before we get to this point of trying to vote on something. So if you have those things noted, we can actually just send that in. We'll get all those questions answered for next week.
So I have some picky little things and then I have bigger questions. Can we just table this and I'll send my questions?
Yes.
And they can maybe be addressed and we can address them more efficiently next week?
Does anybody have any problems with tabling this to next week as well?
No, just Sonia, could you include me in those questions that you have?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
Sonia, if you could include myself and Luke Ather. Luke was able to go to a VSBA training on this exact policy that was conducted by either Pietro or his wife and legal partner. So he has specific knowledge as well. And this is as we all know, a lengthy and very complicated policy, and also one of those verbatim, other than clerical errors or misprints. It's one of these verbatim policies. So if you include Luke and myself, then we can make sure we get the best information to you.
So just to be clear, I understand the policy has been handed down from the Department of Education, and I understand we have to pass it verbatim. I have questions. There's things in there about this person and trainings and questions. So I just have questions. Is there procedures that are being developed to go along with that? And maybe you guys can answer those questions. So I'll present those in questions and then we can have that as part of our packet for next week.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, this is tabled to next week. We'll have all those answers and be able to move on them at that point. We're at the point.
Don't
Yes.
be shocked if the agenda for your next board meeting comes out and these are listed as second reads, because Tina was really struggling to put it together today. And she said if she had to get it out today, she wouldn't know if it was passed or not. So I said, put them as second reads. And if we have to adjust the agenda at the front of the meeting to put them back to first readings, that we will. Does that make sense?
Has that agenda been sent out yet?
She was going to try to send it out today. So
I hadn't received it.
I haven't seen it yet, but don't be surprised, if it does go out and it says second and final reading, we can just change that at the front of the meeting under changes to the agenda.
Why don't we see if we can change this in the morning, David?
Yes,
So-
I'll send her a quick message. And the last we spoke at the end of the afternoon, she was nearly finished, but not quite with the agenda.
Okay, so let's just see if we can intercept that. If it works, fine. Okay, the reopening update. Do we have a reopening update?
Yes, we do. I have a couple of things here. I want to share that the first part of our reopening plan, which was going back to hybrid education, has been successful. I've checked in with the principals at all of the buildings, and other than a few glitches with thermometers or a student here or there not knowing of the change of schedule, the majority of the feedback is that hybrid learning has been successful and students have gone back. Also, taking feedback from the board at the previous meeting, I worked with the administration to move the startup date for grades 5 and 6. It was going to be, I believe, February 1st, and now it will be January 25th. Also, I want to talk a little bit about communication about the reopening plan. Even before I do that, the other aspects of having this plan be successful was using COVID relief fund money to purchase desks so that we could seat students appropriately following the strong and healthy guidance. And with great effort from Lisa and Michelle in the business office and Jamie in facilities, the desks have arrived and have actually even been installed in some of the classrooms. So they are prepared, and the students and teachers are excited. And also our transportation coordinators at both the town and city have been working with the director at student transportation to get bus routes arranged, and they're in order. So those pieces of the puzzle are in place. I'm going to share. Josh Allen has put the reopening plan on the webpage in a way that breaks things down by grade for very clear information so that people can see what will happen with which grade and at what time. And I can also update you to let you know that Josh Allen and I were meeting earlier today to talk about frequent and multimodal communication of this. So using emails to specific families and specific grades, using our automated texting feature to send messages to families, and using our robocall voice system to send information to families. So just a multimodal way to make sure that this plan is clearly communicated. So we are on track for that move to increased in-person learning.
Thank you, David. Any questions pertinent to that?
Just a quick question, Paul. I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but Diane Solomon had asked a question about the data we use for reopening. Is it still appropriate to ask that, or?
Yes, let me share one more page. So the data that we are using to share forward facing on our web page, let me get that put on the screen. Okay, so this link is from the state of Vermont and is posted on our web page, and will show the most accurate information from the state of Vermont that shows the number of confirmed COVID cases in our schools and all of the schools in Vermont. And it is correct that very fortunately, the incidents of COVID are extremely low. Right now, at this point, we have none in our program, and that is very good. So this is what we are using to show the verified by the state of Vermont data. You know, should we need to make a decision to modify our plan? Again, the goal will be to keep programs as open as possible. Something that is in our favor now is that we have more experience with this, and also the Department of Health has geared up to a greater extent so that when we have COVID events, we'll have more accurate line tracing and more accurate contact tracing, and that will result in fewer individuals needing to quarantine, and that will help us keep our schools open and limit the amount of closure that we could face. So those are all positive things in our favor. That also with some portions of our population, as we're all waiting for vaccines, some of our population is able to receive a vaccine. So the indicators, you know, we're always cautious across Vermont and in our lives at this time, but the indicators for us are favorable.
Any other questions? Yes, Sonia.
David, the other thing that we had asked, or I remember asking, we asked you to look at the timeline, and so it looks like you've moved 5 and 6 up by a week, and so that's great. The other part of that is what have we done to help with the amount of instruction for 7 through 12?
Good question. I've been working with both Ms. Pearson and Mr. Hennessy on middle school. They've been working with their faculty to look for ways that they can enhance the hybrid education that's being presented. The rock and the hard place for us with middle school and high school is still with space and the 6-foot requirements. But middle school is looking for ways to enhance what's presented in hybrid education. And also the high school with the next semester is, and you're already aware of this, the board is, of ways that we can increase the number of class sessions for high schoolers to improve that.
Okay, Mrs. Parker, I think you had a question.
Hi there. I wanted to say how much I appreciate the statements from the teachers at the beginning of the meetings, at the beginning of the meeting today. Really great to hear from them and all their concerns and all their love for their jobs and their students. So really appreciate them coming on the meeting. I really appreciate all the work that's been done, especially the changes for K to 6. I'm really excited for those kids and families to be heading back to school for 4.5 days a week. I think that's so great for them. My own 2 kids in 8th grade, we're not quite there yet with what I'd like to see for them. So I'm still hopeful that that's going to come in the future. You know, I hear you saying, David, that we're still working on how to increase and improve the hybrid learning opportunities. And we're not there yet, unfortunately. My own 2 kids this week, on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, those are their remote days, they had really only about 2 hours of schoolwork on those days, just a very few assignments. So they went today to school and they'll go again tomorrow. But I'm concerned that the weeks are turning into months and months and months of saying we're still looking for ways to make the hybrid better when we don't have dates of when the hybrid is going to be over for these kids. So I don't know how to ask anymore to say, like, I'd like to stop working on that and like be there with that for these kids. As I said last time, I'm really concerned about them going into high school with now almost a full year of never being in the classroom full time. So one other thing I wanted to ask about is in the last meeting, somebody, it might have been Jake Larrabee, asked about the big spaces in the schools. So, and I know that it's been thought about the auditorium, gymnasium space, and the cafeteria and the library. And I just wondered, what are those spaces currently being used for? And is it at all possible to consider really going outside the box and making those available for some of those 7th and 8th grade kids to at least add 1 extra day a week or something like that? I know some of that is happening in other districts, that they are, just going outside the box, and now the cafeteria is a classroom, or the gym is a classroom. So I was wondering about that.
Thank you, Doug.
Sure. To answer those questions, and we have brought them up before. So there's 2 situations, right? One is, I'll address it first, is space. And space and staffing as well. How many teachers do you have to supervise classes, et cetera? And I know that my administrators in both of the middle schools have looked at their spaces and looked at their staffing to maximize the number of students they can have at one time. So they have maximized that. When I say that, they are working on improving the education, it is working with their teams and working with their faculty to improve the quality of the remote portion of the hybrid education. And I don't know if Mr. Hennessy or Ms. Pearson, who are on the call, might want to speak to some of those, but those are some of the things that are in a continual improvement mode. So the space is a sticking point until the guidance changes. But the ongoing mission is to improve the remote learning. And I know I see them on the call, so I'll give a moment if Chris or Erica wanted to add any thoughts.
Erica?
I can go first too. I'm happy to. Erica, do you want to flip a coin?
Go for it, Chris. You beat me to the microphone.
All right. Hi, Chris. Hi, Miss Parker, former colleague of mine. Very good to see you. Chris, I know this is incredibly frustrating. I think what I can assure you, I hope I can assure you that, well, I can only speak for Barry City, but I know our friends up at Barrytown are doing the same thing, to really look at all the different spaces that we have available. More so than space, though, it's also about staffing and trying to use those spaces creatively in a way where we can actually have all of our teachers available to use it. And it's really about when we look at the big cafeteria, the big gym, it's not so simple to just put classrooms in those spaces. They're being used for storing items, preparing meals to be delivered to the community, and it's just it's proven to be really challenging. So we're doing our best, and I think back to David's point that what we're really spending our time on is really trying to make sure this hybrid experience is as engaging and challenging as possible going forward. And we are making progress with that. So. I mean, I don't know, Eric, if you have anything else to add to it, but it's really the staffing challenges that make this harder to do.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Hi, Chris. Other Chris. Hi. I would echo the same, but I can give you an example of some of the things that we're trying to look into right now, Chris, is unfortunately for example, our interventionists piece at the middle school at Barrytown is a little slim these days. We weren't able to fill one of those positions, but trying to find other staff in the building who might be able to hold some lessons online for grades that they might not normally work with, but are licensed to work with. And we're just trying to really think outside the box in that kind of way. The tricky part is, like I said, we're running kind of slim. I still don't have a full staff in my middle school. We're getting better. And happy news that I was able to have a few interviews for a Spanish position today. But those are the barriers that we have. But we are looking at ways that we can work within people's schedules to try to find offerings for those kiddos when they are home.
I would welcome any single outside the box ideas. Honestly, my kids are 13. They're at home alone 3 days a week. And well, 1 day a week they're home with a parent because we've worked our work schedules out. But it would just be so great to have something outside the box as like, yeah, this is wacky, but we're going to do it because it's better than just what's been available. And I'm worried about for them in high school. The last report card they got was talking about how they weren't putting in enough effort into their schoolwork on Google Classroom. That's kind of hard to hear when they're basically like 3 days a week kind of doing their own teaching, So anything that is outside the box, no matter how wacky, I'm here for it, and I appreciate the effort, and I look forward to that stuff coming out, really hopefully this month, because it's just going on and on for such a long time. But thank you, and I know other people have their hands digitally raised, so I will let Chris move on.
Chris, before you go, I will put a plug back out to you as a fellow educator. If you know anyone that is licensed and is looking for some work, please send them my way because we could definitely use some other folks. So please use your network as well. I appreciate your time.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Then
Victoria has her hand up.
Victoria has her hand up. Okay.
I was gonna say, I think we're all trying to be polite and use our digital hands, but I guess it's hard to see them. I honestly, Chris and Erica, I would love to actually hear specifics instead of just we're making a plan for how we can improve it. We've discussed several times about, videotaping the in-person lectures. Has our IT department looked at miking up teachers, recording their lessons that are happening in person? I can understand some of the privacy portion of those students in class, but if you mic a teacher, you can halt all the background noise. and then we could just have their lessons to play. Mary Ellen, when you were here for your interview, you talked about how you had experience in, we had the teachers teach as if they were taping, so that way, if we had to move to remote learning, that these kids would already know how to be taking those lessons. And I feel like we're so far into this and we still haven't gotten to the part where we're being successful in getting these things done. I can fully appreciate, my children are in the virtual academy. They sit down every morning and there's a list of lessons that they need to accomplish. They sit down, they click on the computer, they're learning things. And I just feel like either we haven't embraced technology fully, or we haven't actually gone to taping teachers remotely in order to get this done. And I feel like we're at a point where that decision needs to be made. So, is the plan moving forward to find alternative sources still, or is the plan moving forward to try and tape our own personnel to get this done?
Thank you, Victoria. Okay, we're going to move.
No. I think we should have answers to the questions.
Okay.
Can I speak up as a classroom teacher? This is Laura Lee Carvu. So I think, Victoria, there are a couple of things that make it really complicated to make a teacher. I can't do an interactive lesson with my students in the classroom if I'm supposed to also be aware of confidentiality. I can't call on students. I can't redirect them. And that makes it really complicated to make a teacher and record a live lesson. And then the other part that I wanted to address was the idea that you asked about classroom teachers not being as effective online teachers. And then there again, I think you're asking classroom teachers to do two jobs at that point. Your students, your children who are in an online virtual academy are being taught by a teacher who has been specifically trained to teach them on the computer only. I'm trained as a classroom teacher with a live version of a group of students. And so classroom teachers are learning a lot about technology. We're juggling a lot. And by asking us to be really amazing at both, that's not something we even can have time for in our lives, as well as emotionally, mentally balance that all. So the work we're doing as classroom teachers is a lot more this year by teaching virtually through this hybrid model. It's more work than I've ever done, and I've taught a really long time. Going back in person is going to be great. It's going to make my job way easier. That's all I wanted to say.
And I would add that thank you, Laura Lee, for saying that. There are a lot of complexities in recording classrooms, and it's not to mean that it's off the table. It certainly is, but the best type of instruction, we have to understand that would not mean that we would have for a 45-minute to hour-long math class. We would have that teacher standing in front of the room being recorded. Typically what would be happening is the direct instruction might be happening for 10 to 15 minutes right at the beginning. Then that teacher is working with small groups around the classroom. And back to Laura Lee's point, this requires a lot of different training and new learning on the teacher's part to take that on. So it's not something that can just be done quickly. And there are also some technological challenges we have with that to have all of the classrooms filmed. We may have to make sure we have the infrastructure to do it. So we're not saying we can't do this. We are looking into ways to increase it, but it's not so simple as just recording the classroom for the entire time. So there's just a lot of complexities with it, as long as people know that.
David?
I do have a question. I'll hold just one moment, but thank you. I just wanted to summarize this topic, and I know that it's been brought up before. I know that today I was having a conversation with Ms. Pearson about Berrytown Middle School, and I've talked with Mr. Henderson. So the need to have more video content as part of the mix, like Chris said, you wouldn't, as Mr. Hennessy said, you wouldn't have a 45-minute or 2-hour video. That's not effective, but to have more video content is a goal. And I know for a fact that our principals are working with their teacher teams to accomplish this. And then I wanted to say that I see that we have a question from Caleb Metcalf, and then Ms. Berard has another question to parents. So I wanted to make sure that we saw those.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm Caleb's mom. He's a 4th grader at Berry City. He is on an IEP. I was also an employee of Berry City. So I have an idea of working with students. Had I not had the experience of working at the school, I would be completely lost these last few months. First of all, I just want to say my son's teachers have been absolutely amazing this school year. I could not have asked for better teachers for my son. My question is, why not offer for the students that it's working for hybrid, a third option to continue with hybrid because it's working? So the students that chose remote get to stay remote, but the students that chose hybrid are forced to go full in person. Now, I only chose hybrid because my son is on an IEP and I knew that he would benefit from the in-person instruction more. That is the only reason why I chose hybrid, because he needed that in-person, the face-to-face instruction. But I'm not comfortable with him going all week long yet because the numbers are still rising. Yes, they're rising slowly, but they're still rising. COVID's changing. It's mutating, and that's scary. It's really scary. My parents live down in Tennessee, and they both just got over COVID. And they both stated that through it, that they didn't know if they were going to make it through it because they were both extremely sick. That's scary. That's extremely scary. I have an elderly grandmother that I also have to take care of. So if he's at school every day with a classroom full of kids, then I have to go see her and help her with something, and he's going to school every day and I'm exposed, and then I expose her. You know what I mean? Like, it's, why is there not a third option? Why are we being forced? What seems like we're being forced into full in-person is my question.
This is part of the difficulty because we have multiple groups of individuals that want different things. And in this whole great experiment of what's happened in COVID, we're still, believe it or not, trying to find our way to improve upon a situation that's been most difficult. We started cold turkey at the very beginning of this stuff. And to make this thing come off as an educational system with all the different restrictions and the spacings and the fact that we had gone through shutdowns and stuff, this was something that no one could have prepared for. It's very, very difficult, and we're not going to please everybody. We already know that. What we're trying to do is make the education system work better and to improve. Hopefully, with the inoculations and everything else that's coming out, maybe we can get back to a sense of normalcy. But that still may be a few months off from what we're hearing. Someone else wishes to speak? I don't have all the screens.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that Ms. Berard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go right ahead, please.
So I just have a question. I wasn't at the last school board meeting, but I did listen to the video, and it was brought up at that time that one of the options might be looking at other communities to see what they're doing. For example, like Essex High School, they go 2 full days. And I know that we're coming upon that, but it was just an example, like maybe contact other communities to see what they're doing. I'm having a hard time right now with the hybrid model. I have a full-time job. I'm a claims adjuster. I read a lot of legal documents. I have to stop constantly and help my fourth grader who's on an IEP. And my high schoolers are struggling. Their teachers, well, they read from a book and then they give them the rest of the time to do their homework. That's not a good way of learning. I don't see them gaining anything that way. But then again, some kids learn great on remote, so that's good. But I know in college, like high school, you're preparing them for college, and yes, they do a lot of online, but they also get a lot of, they can have video teaching as well. So I know that for the younger kids, that might be not conducive to their learning. You know, they need a lot of interaction with their teachers, but a video, like I agree with that. That's a good option. I don't think we should close the door to one option. I think we should look at a whole different options and come up with the best alternative. Because yes, this is unprecedented, but we've had a lot of time to work out certain kinks, and I think we should just come together and work for better solutions, because it isn't perfect and it's not going to be, but it could be better. So has that been happening? Have we looked at other communities to see what they're doing?
So to answer that, and appreciate the comment, and yes, we have. Something that makes that a little bit difficult is that it's not always an apples to apples comparison. You know, thinking of the number of students in a particular high school, or the number of staff they might have according to their budget, or the square footage in the building. And those are all the factors that the high school team, the Spalding team, looked at to make their schedule, at least as far as the spacing and the time of day of the schedule and the number of class periods, etc., to make that as safe as possible and adhere to the 6-foot requirement for high school students. Again, I know from you know, speaking with Mrs. Waterhouse and the team, you know, they're going to be modifying their schedule for the second semester, but they are also, those teachers are, you know, finding ways to improve the content of the, pardon me, letting someone into the meeting, into the remote learning that they're offering. And also too, related to some of these topics and other concerns that have been raised, we will be having our second in-service of the school year next week, and on Monday the 19th. And the focus of that will be to gauge student progress and look at our scope and sequence to see what essential topics and concepts have been taught, and then for teachers to make plans to address essential skills. And I'm excited to talk at future board meetings how the Barry School District will have a plan to recover the learning that has been lost. Mary Ellen Simmons, my assistant superintendent, and I have been discussing this, and actually Secretary French just brought it up in his conversation with superintendents today, that the next phase would be for Vermont schools to move into recovery of learning. And I'm pleased to say that we're putting in the groundwork, and I should be able to announce, you know, in the next meeting or so, the plan that we will have as well.
Paul is gone. I don't know where he went. So I'm going to take over for a second, and I'm going to ask you a question. So I've heard it mentioned a couple times, and I asked last time about, sorry, Paul, I took over because you left, about concurrent learning, where the teacher is not recording, but just giving the lesson, and students are expected to be tuning in. And I understand that that's, you know, research tells us that that's not the best way to do things. After speaking to a couple friends in other states, that's how their students are learning, with a hybrid schedule. They go to very large schools, and that's how they're expected to get their schoolwork done. So my question is, why can't we do that? And what is the concern about privacy? I don't understand what the privacy issue is. If we had students all in the same classroom and we were calling on them, every student in that classroom would know that their friend, whoever Susie, was being called on. So what's the difference if you're on a video or actually in person? Help me understand that.
Well, there's two parts to my answer to that, and Mary Ellen, if you have anything to add, I'd be glad to hear as well. The best practice in secondary education, again, is, let's say if it was 2 years ago and we were in regular in-person everyday learning, the best practice would be that class should be multimodal, with the teacher having some part of a mini lesson where they're explaining concepts, some part where there's practice, and some part where there's feedback, where the students receive check-in and feedback from their teacher. So that's the best practice, to have it be multimodal. That's not the case in all schools, and some are using outdated model where it's more lecture than other things. So because it's multimodal, that's one of the reasons that we wouldn't have a live stream per se of an entire class. But I know, and Ms. Waterhouse might want to speak to it, I know that the high school teachers are working on adding more dynamic content into their remote learning. So that was one aspect of your question. And the other is for privacy, is that when you're capturing back and forth conversations between the students and their teacher, in the classroom, you know absolutely everyone who's there. And if you had a guest in the classroom, you would know you had a guest in the classroom. It's a little different when we're in an online environment, and on the home end of things, we don't know who is there, and we have the responsibility to protect the privacy of students. So that's part of the privacy concern. Mary Ellen, I don't know if you have anything to add to my answer.
We are bound by confidentiality and privacy issues. It is a complicated thing, but I think David explained it really well. And basically, every student has the right to privacy, and we as educators need to protect that. And it's multiple ways. Some of them, they have signed something saying they do not want to be photographed, they do not want to be identified. Some of it, it's a child protection issue where they don't want their identity out there for safety reasons. I mean, it's really multifaceted on that issue, but we are bound by confidentiality.
So my follow-up is, how are other schools doing this? Because I'm sure they're running into those same issues. How are they doing concurrent learning when they probably also have students who are, have child protective issues or do not want their identity? How are they handling it? I mean, I know I'm quite certain U32 is 5 days on, 5 days off. The 5 days you're not in school, you are signing into your classroom. And I find it hard to believe that they're not addressing privacy issues. So how are they doing it in the next town over?
Right, I know that some schools are doing it, and it may not be the best model for them to do as well. I'm going to ask if Brenda is on the call, and I'm pretty sure that she is, that she might speak to some of the things that high school teachers are working on.
Sure. So I think that one of the challenges that's coming up is we're talking in generalities, but then we also have specifics. So we don't have a one size fits all. We do have teachers that are doing synchronous lessons. We do have teachers that are giving, I'll say, streaming, where they have the students in front of them and that they're providing the lesson with students that are online simultaneously. We have students that are in breakout rooms electronically while there's students in person. So we have that going on. Is it across the board in every single lesson and every single day?
No. And so we've given our teachers to that ability that if one, they have a little more tech savvy ability to do that, but also when it's appropriate for the lesson. It isn't always appropriate, and it's not about, as it was mentioned earlier, standing in front of the computer screen for, you know, a solid hour. So the lesson may happen, whether it's videotaped and watched asynchronously or it's happening synchronously, but it's working on that consistency. That is where we're at right now, so that we're getting more and more of that. So I do hear people saying, well, I wish we are doing that. It isn't just all the time in every single lesson. So if a student hasn't had that experience, I'm sorry, I can, you know, try to have them speak with, you know, those individual teachers and see what's appropriate or not. But there are lessons that are being videotaped. There are videos that are being made, and it's increasing every single week. We're doing more of that.
Paul, I see a question from, thank you, Brenda. Paul, I see a question from Tim Sanborn.
Hi, this is Tim Sanborn. I teach 6th grade at Berrytown, and I also just wanted to speak to the concurrent, the idea of teaching concurrently. And it really echoes what Brenda just said. And really the way that I perceive it when I would think about teaching that way, and I know that, you know, at this point I wouldn't need to do that because my students are coming back, but it changes the way you deliver your instruction for those who are in person. And so, yes, you can do it. But in my mind, it changes the interactions you're allowed to have in person. So essentially, everyone at that point is having the remote experience. And I know that there are some hurdles that are overcomable, like the fact that in order for me to do that in my classroom, I have one microphone and it is glued to my desk. And if I go 6 feet from my desk, nobody can hear me. And so if I was having an interactive lesson that students were listening into, they wouldn't be able to hear other students from the back of the room, and they'd miss that part of the lesson. You know, and that one's something, okay, we buy a bunch of mics or whatever. Those are things you can change. But if you're trying to teach to both groups and have them have a similar experience and learn the same amount from it, you're really not getting the benefits of having the students in front of you. And I think that that's an important thing to really differentiate there. And that's not true across the board. I'm sure that's different in different contents. I happen to teach science, and teaching science in person is a whole lot more interactive and hands-on and engaging typically than it is when it's done remote. And you would lose a piece of that if you were trying to teach concurrently to both groups. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
And I would like to add one more comment, because the term concurrent actually means something else. So just for clarification, concurrent is, in the high school level, it's a course that is earning college credit and high school credit simultaneously that our teachers are teaching. And we have some of that going on as well. And I think the concurrent we're talking about here is really like the synchronous learning experience.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
I also, and I want to make sure, Paul, that you know that Diane Solomon has a question as well.
Okay, well, I'll let Diane go ahead.
Nothing's
Thank you. This is a little bit off the topic, so I don't know if I should wait, but I guess I'll just jump in. I've had lots of communications, like I alluded to earlier, with administrators, and I'm very appreciative of your time and efforts. That's to administrators and teachers. I think you're hearing from a community that appreciates the teachers' work, but also feels like their students are suffering and lagging behind because of the lack of in-person. That being said, I have a question and concern around attendance, and specifically at the high school level, Brenda. I'm wondering if you have a sense of the attendance of the number of remote days, if those will actually count for in-person days.
So let me just clarify your question. You're asking if the students are, when they're remote, if they're counted as attended or not. Is that correct?
It's correct, because I was under the impression that the 9 a.m. mandatory TA counted as attendance as a day of work. And that's going to be an issue for many high schoolers that have missed those 9 a.m. TAs when they were remote for weeks on end.
Yeah, so we took the attendance for advisory when we were fully remote, and that's where we were documenting that piece. Obviously, we're still keeping track of students doing their work in classes. Going back to the hybrid schedule, it is going back to the attendance for each class, whether it be that they're physically present. So it's a little complicated in our student management system, but if they're physically present in the building, they're marked present. If they're present but remotely, so that means they've logged in, they've attended, then they're marked, quote, tardy, because that's how we're differentiating for contact tracing purposes. And then, of course, there's absent when they have not logged in.
Did enough high school students attend their advisory during the remote period for those remote days to count, and they don't have to make them up at the end of the school year?
Yes, our attendance is definitely lower than when we are fully in person, but we have our students attending.
Okay, Sonia?
So this is a follow-up question for Brenda, and I suppose for Chris and Erica, because I'm concerned about the 7 through 12, because they're not getting any more in-person learning. And I'm hearing from teachers and I'm hearing from administrators that we're doing our best and we're trying. I'm concerned when I'm hearing from 2 parents tonight, three parents, at least 3 parents, who are concerned about their students and the isolation. And I'm concerned that I understand we don't have space issue. We do have space issues, and we have concerns about doing synchronous learning because of privacy issues. But I'm really concerned that it's January. We've been doing this for months and we still haven't figured out how to do it well. I'm also concerned that some teachers, it sounds like Brenda's saying that some teachers are doing synchronous lessons. And if some students aren't getting synchronous lessons, maybe they're not getting them all the time based on, the lesson that's being taught. But what happens if a teacher just doesn't feel comfortable doing it? And then those students are missing out. I feel like we're leaving a lot up to the discretion of the teachers, which I understand the teachers have a very big job, but I also understand these students are struggling and parents are struggling with their students. So how can we make this better? And not, oh, we're working on it, but this is what we're going to have done by this day. And this is what our expectation is. And this is what, and I hear that, we're working on it, but it's like watching paint dry. It's very slow progress. So can you give us any definitive things that are going to change in the next week, in the next 2 weeks? Can you give us any data about how many classes are being taught synchronously? Can you give us any of that information?
Hey, Sonia, can I just make a quick point? I see that Hayden had his hand up first. Excuse me, Hayden, you can go first.
Thank you. I know you didn't address me there, Sonia, but I just wanted to mention, I know there's been a lot of questions for the 7th and 8th grade administrators and to the high school, but I just wanted to bring up that a lot of this work has happened through the reopening committee. And so kind of asking these administrators tonight I don't feel is the appropriate avenue, because all of this work has happened through that reopening committee. And unfortunately, the reopening committee hasn't met since the last board meeting due to the nature of the timing of the winter break. So I don't know if it's better to bring these questions to the reopening committee and then be able to answer them. I understand your concerns around timing and where we're going, And I know it's not my place to necessarily try to answer your question, but I just wanted to mention that because a lot of that work has come from that committee, and it feels like maybe that's more the place for that. I don't know. Sorry.
Brenda?
Are there people on the reopening committee that are in this meeting right now that could answer that question?
Mary Ellen?
So
Go ahead,
It
Brenda.
doesn't matter. Just take one.
So I was going to say, it's not an easy answer. It's not a black and white where I can say on Friday we will have this figured out. And we've been working really, really hard. And I understand from everybody else's outside perspective that it may look like there's been little progress, but there has been significant progress in the instruction, the quality, the quantity, every aspect of it, in relatively short period of time. And so to say that we will have it perfect, it isn't, no one across the world is going to have a perfect system. We're all doing the absolute best, and we continue to make progress. And I don't know how much more I can promise than that. We are not sitting idle. We are not just saying we're working on it. Like, we are making progress. I don't know what data I can share. I can get information about how many synchronous learning lessons we have going on or how many different experiences or videos, but that's continuously changing too. So if that's the pleasure of the board, we can gather more information like that, but it's growing every single day.
I'm going to go to Mary Ellen, then to Chris Hennessy.
One of the questions was, what are we doing within the next week? And within the next week, we have a whole school in-service day. And the focus of the in-service day is to take a look at what has been taught from the beginning of the year to now. And we actually have a format to go through this process. We have matched that with the essential priorities for each grade level in the subject area, so that we can identify what's been covered, what still needs to be covered from now until June, and then what practices are we going to put into place to make that happen. That's the focus of our in-service day coming up.
Chris Hennessy, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Just in response to Sonia, your points earlier about the fact that, you know, after all of this time, we're still not doing it well. And I have to take strong objection to that comment and go back to how Allison Healy and Rachel Van Vliet started off this meeting at the beginning of the day. That when our 7th and 8th grade teachers, and I'm sure our teachers at Spalding hear this, it's incredibly harmful. And I know that's not your intention or anybody's intention in this meeting, but people are working incredibly hard. And what's happening is when this comes out, it creates a false narrative, because the vast majority of the feedback that we are getting from our families is both appreciative and thankful and remarkably positive about what we've been able to offer our kids. Now, there are some families for whom this is not working, of course, and some of them are here tonight. But for anybody in the community to imply that we are not doing this well, or implying that we're not trying to do it well, it's just an utterly false narrative. I know that's not people's intention, but it is incredibly harmful when that comes out. I can assure you, we are busting our tails to improve this as we go. And our goal is to get kids back as soon as we can. We're as disappointed as anybody else that we can't get our 7th and 8th graders back in. And I know our colleagues at Spalding feel the same way. This is driving us nuts. But please, all of us here understand, we are putting our best foot forward every day. And so I just think that needs to be put out. I've been worried about the false narrative that's emerged at these meetings. And it's very worrisome to me as somebody who loves this community. And I know it's not people's intention, but it's coming out that way.
Christine Parker.
Thanks. Hi. Along the lines of the training and the in-service days that are coming up, not necessarily for this year, but perhaps for the opening for the fall of next year, I think adding some things to the high school's in-service days before the year starts would be specifically, what are the incoming freshmen going to need as a result of being out of school for almost 1 full year of full-time schooling? So kids starting in March of last year, and then for all of the spring, and then the fall, and the full remote, and the back and forth remote to hybrid, et cetera. Those kids, I think, as a whole, will not have the executive functioning skills that they need, that you might expect to see normally going into high school. And so I hope the staff and faculty will be able to access extra training on how to support those kids, because they're not going to be your typical freshman coming in ready to go in the way that you might hope to see. So just a plug for that extra training for the faculty on how to support those kids when they come in.
Ms. Berard? Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Hennessy said. I am in no way not saying that the teachers aren't trying their best or not working hard. I know that they're working hard. I speak with my 4th graders teacher every day. I'm just saying that it's not perfect, and I know it's not going to be, but it's not close to being okay either. When my oldest struggles online because he's not getting what he needs from his teachers, that's a problem. When I hear him do his Zooming and his teacher's reading from a book, that's a problem. That's not conducive to high school learning. I'm sorry. I understand that it's hard to hear, but we all have to take some criticism in this. And I take criticism in my job every day. It's just part of what you have to do as an adult. And I'm sorry if it's hard to hear, or it's just the way it is. It's constructive criticism, I guess, is what I want to say. But on the other hand, he has some great teachers, and I appreciate everything that they do for him. He's doing really well in some of those classes. But take, for example, my daughter today. She had math class. She had one participant in that math class, and that was her on Zoom. So that's, again, another problem. Like, remote learning isn't always working. So I'm sorry that you took it like I might have been slamming on the teachers. I wasn't. I was just saying that, it's not all perfect.
No, Ms. Berard, I definitely wasn't directing that to you. I promise. Definitely not.
Okay.
This is difficult times, folks. And what I'm going to say is, Brenda, I'll get to you, and then I'll get to Sonia. Everybody's coming at this from a different point of view. A lot of it's personal, and it's kind of hard to meld all of this into one collective body that will work synchronously throughout the entire system. I understand what's going on with faculty. I understand what's going on with administration. I certainly understand the plight of the parents who have got to deal with the jobs and kids at home. This has presented us with so many problems. I'm hoping that we come up with enough cures and enough fixes to get us back to a point of stability in the next few months. Brenda, I'll let you go next, and then I'll go to Sonia.
Yeah, and just to respond to Mrs. Berman, because I appreciate the feedback, and I always ask that parents reach out if they have concerns or things aren't going well, because as you pointed out, it's not going well in one area, it's going well in a different area. We continuously try to work with students and families in those areas, but again, it's not something that we can just say unilaterally across the board is going to be perfect, because this is not going to be an easy developed system in the matter of days. It's a lot of progress has been made. There's definitely a lot of progress still to be made. And I do appreciate the feedback and hope that families will reach out when things aren't going well. But I can't promise that it's going to look perfect either.
David, you got a reminder comment for me, or so I can move on to Sonia?
Why don't we hear Sonia's comment, and then I have a summary comment.
Okay, Sonia.
Sorry, I think Diane Solomon also has a hand raised and Erica Pearson also has a hand raised. So maybe after me, they can go.
Yes.
I just want to respond to Chris and the only, I hear what you're saying, that it sounds like it's a false narrative because I am bringing up points that it's not going well. That's based on the feedback I just heard tonight. That's what I'm hearing from parents. So I understand that teachers are working hard. I understand that things are progressing. I understand that things have changed dramatically since last March, since September. I understand that things are changing. But I also am hearing from parents who are still really struggling with their students and the instruction that they're getting. So that's what I'm hearing. I hear the teachers saying we're working really hard. We want to be back in the classroom. It's difficult for us to teach remote students and in-person students at the same time. I'm hearing all of that, but I'm also hearing parents saying we're really struggling with this. I've been hearing that at every single board meeting we've had since we started school in September.
Okay.
And not the same 3 sets of parents every single time, just to make a point about that. There are different parents who are showing up every week or every 2 weeks to tell us what's going on. We're getting emails. There are parents who are frustrated. And so I'm trying to ask questions on their behalf. And if it seems like I'm attacking teachers, I apologize for that. I'm not attacking teachers. I'm saying I'm trying to push and ask the question, how can we do this better? I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for better.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Diane Solomon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Sonia. I'm coming to these meetings because I want to understand what's happening. I've said all along that if this process of reopening can be transparent to parents and community members, then it would be a lot easier. The communication, the understanding that we would have would make these meetings smoother. So if this reopening committee meets, can you please publish what you talk about so we don't need to rehash it at board meetings? I mean, can it just be a process where we know what's going on so we don't have to ask questions that you've already thought of? I appreciate all the hard work. I just want it to be transparent so we all know what's going on. Thank you.
Erica Pearson. Erica.
Sorry about that, Paul. Thank you. I had my hand up and put it down and had it back up, and it's a little bit out of order now, but I just wanted to circle back around to something that Chris Parker had said that I felt was really important about being able to have some offerings and thinking about what our kids needed when they return even more in person, but also thinking about what they need now. One of the struggles with the thought of live streaming, for example, in a classroom, is that our teachers are not just teaching a subject to the kids that are in front of them when they're there. Our kids have some pretty large social and emotional deficits that they're dealing with right now, because let's not forget what's at the forefront of every child and every person here. They are trying to survive a pandemic just like everyone else. So our teachers have to be able to be there for our students when they are there in person, to also care for their social and emotional well-being to the kids that are in front of them. And sometimes that takes the forefront to the kids that are in front of you, not the content area. If we were live streaming all of the time, that could not be the case. And coming from a previous social worker and someone that shares that passion with Chris Parker, I have to be making sure that I'm advocating that the kids that are there in front of our teachers can have their social and emotional needs met as well. And if we're splitting our teachers' time between a computer screen and the kids that are sitting in front of them, that cannot happen. So I wanted to say thank you to her for bringing that up, because that's something that we haven't really talked about when we have talked about live streaming.
And before I have David do the summary, I have just a quick comment. Although my colleague says that there are a lot of parents who have voiced their concerns here tonight, there are also other parents who have voiced concerns in the opposite spectrum, and that is afraid of coming back into full in-person thing. We have all parts of the spectrum in here, and how we make all that meet in the middle is really the difficulty that we've tasked our administrators with. David, you want to wrap up, please?
Yes, thank you. Just in summary, and it's clear to everyone on the call, and I know we're trying to do what's best for the students of Barry. So it's clear from the onset that hybrid online learning is not an ideal situation, and we would like to have students back in the classroom as much as we can, which is the point of our reopening plan. And in any aspects that we're able to increase that in-person time or make changes that will benefit the students, we'll be posting that to our reopening page for the transparency so that people can see what's coming from that. But I want to assure everyone on the call, we have the students of Barry at the center of our focus and in our hearts. And I know from the work that I do every week, checking in with every one of my administrators, they've checked in with their leadership teams. They have worked with their teachers on ways to improve the education that they're putting forth. And it's not always as easy to quantify those as minutes of video or numbers of class sessions. But I know for a fact that they have all been working on this and have been spending many hours with their leadership team. I think it would be impossible for people to have hybrid learning and remote learning in a pandemic perfect, but we want to have continual improvement. And to Brenda's point, in some of the concerns that have been brought up here, we want to improve those things. So when I have parents bring concerns to me, I will bring them to the administrators so that they can look at those issues and look for solutions for those. I ask board members, if you receive concerns that you don't see that I'm copied on, please make sure that I have them. We want to address those things. I heard Brenda Waterhouse talking about that. So our goal is continual improvement. I know that there is hard work going on in each one of our grade levels. And our goal is to improve both in-person and our hybrid learning to the greatest extent that we can. We'll be publishing that information on our reopening page, but I appreciate all the comments and thoughts on this important matter.
Okay, then let's bring this to conclusion for 4.6 as to other business. We're going to be meeting 2 more times this month, so if there's other improvements and other concerns, we'll be able to have those voiced at that time as well. Okay, do we have a need for an executive session?
Not on my end.
Okay. I'm not going to do the roundtable because we'll be doing that next week anyways. We're at a point right now where we can adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Alice Farrell. Is there a second? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Guy Isabel. All those in favor signify by saying aye or thumbs up. Alice, Yamal, Guy, Sonia, Tim.
Aye.
Giuliano.
Aye.
Victoria.
Aye.
Is Gina still online?
No, she's not.
Okay, and I vote aye. Did I leave anybody out? Then we are adjourned. Thank you very much. It's I know these things are trying, and hopefully we'll get through this sooner than later. Y'all have a good night now.
Thank you.